In the last months of 2022, something shifted in our collective understanding of the future. It wasn't a sudden event, but a quiet, creeping realization that a long-predicted technological wave was no longer on the horizon. It was at the shore. While a famous 2013 study from Oxford University had introduced the idea that 47% of jobs were at high risk of automation, that prediction always felt distant, something for the next decade or two. It was an academic forecast. But then, a 2023 report from Goldman Sachs landed with a different kind of weight. It didn't speak in theoretical probabilities over 20 years. Instead, it estimated that generative artificial intelligence, a single branch of AI that had just become publicly accessible, could impact the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs worldwide. The timeline had compressed. The abstract had become tangible. What was once a topic for economists and futurists was now a practical reality being tested by millions of people on their laptops, generating text, images, and code with simple prompts. The pace of change had fundamentally broken with historical precedent, creating a new kind of uncertainty. How do we navigate a labor transition that is not unfolding over the span of generations as the Industrial Revolution did, but is projected to occur within the span of a single decade? By the end of this exploration, you will have a clearer map of this new territory. We will move beyond the headlines to understand the data, the real-world timelines, and the concrete strategies available for adapting to this emerging economic season. The goal is not to predict a single, inevitable future, but to understand the forces at play so we can navigate the coming changes with foresight and intention, rather than with surprise and reaction. The crucial difference in this technological shift lies in the nature of the work being affected. Previous waves of automation were primarily about muscle and simple cognition. The assembly line robot replaced the human arm in its repetitive, predictable motions. Spreadsheet software replaced the meticulous, rule-based work of manual bookkeeping. These were technologies that targeted the physical and the procedural. This new wave, powered by large language models and diffusion models, targets something else entirely. The very tasks we once believed were uniquely human. It targets language, creativity, communication, and synthesis. We are now watching AIs draft legal contracts, write functioning software code, generate photorealistic marketing images, and compose compelling essays. These are not blue-collar, routine tasks. They are the core functions of the 21st century knowledge worker. This is why the Goldman Sachs number, while numerically smaller than the Oxford 47%, feels so much more profound. It represents an encroachment into the domains of cognitive labor that have, until now, been the safest harbor in a sea of automation. It's essential to understand what impacted truly means in this context. It does not necessarily mean 300 million jobs will be eliminated. Instead, it signals a deep and systemic restructuring of workflows. The World Economic Forum, in its 2023 Future of Jobs report, clarifies this. They project that while 83 million jobs may be displaced by 2027, 69 million new jobs are expected to be created. The net disruption is smaller than the headline figures suggest, but the churn underneath is immense. It is a story of tasks, not just jobs. Think of a graphic designer. Her job is not simply to design. It is a bundle of tasks: client communication, conceptual brainstorming, sketching initial ideas, rendering digital assets, and revising work based on feedback. Today, An AI can generate dozens of initial concepts in seconds, effectively automating a significant portion of the ideation and rendering process. The designer's job doesn't disappear, but its core value shifts. It moves away from the technical skill of using the software and toward the human skills of taste, client empathy, strategic thinking, and curation. The designer becomes an art director for an infinitely capable, yet mindless, digital apprentice. This pattern of augmentation, where the human works alongside the AI, is one of the most likely paths forward for many professions. The tool changes, and so the nature of the craft must change with it. This transition introduces a new kind of economic pressure. In the past, the path to career security was often specialization, becoming the best at a specific, valuable skill. But when that skill can be replicated and scaled infinitely by an AI at near zero marginal cost, the value of that human specialization plummets. The premium now shifts to a different set of abilities: adaptability, critical thinking, the ability to ask the right questions of an AI, and the capacity to integrate the outputs of multiple AI systems into a coherent, valuable whole. This is the landscape we find ourselves in. We are standing at the beginning of a transformation of knowledge work that is as fundamental as the transformation of agriculture during the Agrarian Revolution or of craft production during the Industrial Revolution. The difference is its speed. The feedback loop between technological improvement and real-world deployment is now measured in months, not decades. A new, more capable AI model is released, and within weeks, it is integrated into the software used by millions, immediately altering their daily work. This acceleration presents both a profound challenge and a hidden opportunity. The challenge is clear: the need for rapid reskilling and adaptation on a scale we have never before attempted. Educational institutions, corporate training programs, and individuals must all recalibrate for a world of continuous learning. The opportunity, however, is equally significant. By automating the routine and tedious aspects of cognitive work, we may be freeing up human potential to focus on deeper, more meaningful problems, on innovation, on human connection, and on the complex, creative problem-solving that remains, for now, our exclusive domain. The central question is how we build the bridges, social, economic, and educational, to get from here to there without leaving millions stranded on the wrong side of the technological divide. Understanding this future requires us to first look back, to see the echoes of our current anxieties in the technological transitions of the past, and to learn from the patterns that have governed our relationship with automation for centuries. To truly grasp the contours of our near future, we must first look to the past. Our current anxiety about artificial intelligence is not a new emotion. It's a recurring echo in the long hallway of human history. Whenever a transformative technology emerges, so too does the fear of mass obsolescence. This fear has a name: the Luddite fallacy. It originates with the textile workers of early 19th century England, who famously smashed the automated looms they believed would destroy their livelihoods. From their perspective, their fear was entirely rational. For a skilled weaver, whose entire identity and economic value was tied to their craft, the mechanical loom was an existential threat. And indeed, for many of them, it was. Their individual jobs were permanently lost. Yet the fallacy was not in their personal predicament, but in the extrapolation of that loss to the entire economy forever. What the Luddites could not see was the second-order effects of their own disruption. The automation of weaving dramatically lowered the cost of cloth. This made textiles, once a relative luxury, accessible to the masses. The resulting explosion in demand created a cascade of new jobs that were entirely unimaginable to the original weavers. There was a need for workers to build the factories, to maintain the machines, to manage the supply chains of raw cotton, to design new patterns, and to work in the expanding retail and logistics sectors that sold the finished goods. The economy didn't shrink. It restructured and grew larger in the process. The nature of work changed from skilled, artisanal craft to factory-based production, creating a new set of challenges around labor conditions and urbanization. But it did not lead to permanent mass unemployment. This pattern, where technology displaces specific tasks, and in doing so, creates new demands and unforeseen industries, is the central lesson from the Industrial Revolution. We saw this same pattern repeat, albeit in a different form, during the personal computer revolution of the 1980s and 90s. The arrival of affordable desktop computers armed with powerful spreadsheet and word processing software sparked another wave of anxiety. Prognosticators warned of the hollowing out of the secretarial pool, the obsolescence of bookkeepers, and the decimation of middle management roles that were largely based on information processing. And again, on a task-by-task basis, they were correct. The need for typing pools vanished as managers began typing their own memos. The tedious work of manual ledger accounting was automated by programs like Lotus 123 and later Microsoft Excel. But did this lead to a collapse in employment? Quite the opposite. The personal computer unleashed a productivity boom and created an entirely new ecosystem of jobs. The ability to manipulate and analyze information so effortlessly gave rise to new fields. Financial analysis became more sophisticated, data-driven marketing was born, and entire industries like software development, IT support, and web design emerged from nothing. The computer didn't just automate old tasks, it made new types of work possible. It enabled small businesses to manage their finances with a sophistication once reserved for large corporations, and it allowed individuals to become publishers, analysts, and designers. The core historical lesson here is subtle but crucial. Technology does not typically eliminate jobs wholesale. Instead, it relentlessly automates tasks within jobs. A job is not a monolithic activity. It is a collection of tasks. The introduction of the calculator didn't eliminate the accountant. It eliminated the task of manual calculation, freeing the accountant to focus on higher value tasks like financial strategy, tax optimization, and client advisory. The word processor didn't eliminate the writer. It eliminated the painstaking tasks of retyping and correction, allowing the writer to focus on structure, clarity, and creative expression. This task encroachment model is fundamental to understanding the current AI revolution. An AI tool that can draft a legal memo does not necessarily replace a lawyer. It automates a time-consuming task, potentially freeing up that lawyer to handle more cases, spend more time in court, or focus on complex client negotiations. The parts of the job that require nuanced human judgment. The value proposition shifts from performing the routine to orchestrating it, from executing the known to navigating the unknown. This historical perspective provides a vital counterbalance to the sensationalist headlines. It suggests that the future is more likely to be one of profound job transformation rather than outright job extinction. However, it would be a mistake to become complacent and assume that this transition will be seamless or painless. There are two critical differences between past technological waves and the one we are currently entering. The first is speed, as we've discussed. The transition from agrarian to industrial economies took place over generations. The computer revolution unfolded over several decades. The current AI transition is happening in a matter of years. This compressed timeline dramatically reduces the window for societal adaptation, for education systems to adjust, and for individuals to reskill. The social safety nets and educational models built for a world of slower change may prove inadequate for the velocity of this shift. The second, and perhaps more profound, difference is breadth. Previous technologies automated muscle power or clerical, rule-based cognitive work. Artificial intelligence, particularly generative AI, is beginning to automate creativity, synthesis, and complex communication, the very skills that the knowledge economy has prized for the last 50 years. It is targeting the work of the lawyer, the programmer, the artist, and the writer with the same efficiency it once targeted the weaver and the bookkeeper. This means the impact is not confined to a single sector of the economy. It is diffuse and cross-cutting, affecting a much wider swath of the professional landscape simultaneously. So while history provides a comforting reminder that humanity adapts and new forms of work emerge, it also carries a stark warning. The comfort of the long-term historical arc is of little consolation to the individual whose skills are rendered obsolete in the short term. The Luddites were wrong about the economy as a whole, but they were right about their own jobs. Navigating this transition successfully requires us to hold both truths at once: the optimistic, long-term pattern of economic transformation and the challenging, short-term reality of individual displacement. Our task is not simply to wait for new industries to emerge, but to actively build the pathways that help people move from the old to the new with dignity and support. The past teaches us that change is inevitable, but progress is not. Progress is the result of conscious choices, thoughtful policy, and a collective commitment to shaping a future where the benefits of technology are shared broadly. To chart a course for the future, we need an accurate map of the present. Much of the public conversation around job automation has been shaped by a single powerful number: 47%. This figure originates from a seminal 2013 paper by Carl Benedict Fry and Michael Osborne at the University of Oxford, titled "The Future of Employment: How Susceptible Are Jobs to Computerization?" For over a decade, this statistic has been the focal point of countless articles, news segments, and policy discussions, often presented as a definitive prophecy of an impending job apocalypse. But to truly understand its meaning, we have to look past the headline and into the methodology of the study itself. Frey and Osborne's work was a pioneering attempt to quantify the risk of automation across the entire United States labor market. They analyzed 702 distinct occupations and, with the help of machine learning experts, identified the key bottlenecks to computerization at the time, namely, tasks requiring creative intelligence, social intelligence, and complex perception and manipulation. They then used a machine learning algorithm to predict the probability that each of these 702 jobs could be automated. The now famous conclusion was that 47% of total U.S. employment fell into the high-risk category, meaning these jobs had a high probability of being automated over, in their words, the next decade or two. The first crucial nuance here is the language of probability, not certainty. The study did not say that 47% of jobs will disappear. It said they have a high potential to be automated based on the technological capabilities that were foreseeable in 2013. This distinction is vital. It separates what is technologically possible from what is economically, socially, or legally practical. A task can be technically automatable long before it is actually automated in the real world. Think of self-checkout kiosks in supermarkets. The technology has existed for decades, yet human cashiers are still widely employed. Why? Because the implementation of automation is governed by a complex set of factors beyond pure technical feasibility. This leads to the second, and perhaps most important, distinction: the difference between technical potential and economic reality. For a company to replace a human worker with a machine, the economics must make sense. The cost of developing, purchasing, installing, and maintaining the automated system has to be less than the cost of employing a human. For many complex roles, this is still not the case. Consider a humanoid robot designed to work in a chaotic warehouse environment. While prototypes from companies like Boston Dynamics, Tesla, or Figure are becoming increasingly sophisticated, their cost is still astronomical compared to a human worker. Furthermore, they require immense energy, constant maintenance by highly skilled technicians, and sophisticated software that needs perpetual updates. A business owner will not make the switch until the total cost of ownership for the robot drops significantly below the wages and benefits of a human employee. This economic barrier acts as a natural brake on the pace of automation. Beyond economics, there are powerful social and regulatory hurdles. We could, for example, have fully autonomous trucking fleets on our highways today from a purely technical standpoint, but society has not yet resolved the complex ethical and legal questions. Who is liable in an accident? The owner, the manufacturer, or the software developer? How do we create safety standards that the public trusts? The slow, deliberate pace of regulation, while often frustrating, serves as another significant buffer against instantaneous, widespread job displacement. Similarly, social acceptance plays a role. Many people prefer to interact with a human nurse, a human teacher, or a human therapist, even if an AI could perform some of the diagnostic or informational tasks. These deeply ingrained human preferences for connection and empathy in certain roles will slow the adoption of automation in care-based and client-facing professions. Frey and Osborne themselves were always clear about these limitations. Their paper was intended as a warning shot, a prompt for society to begin thinking about these challenges, not as a concrete doomsday prediction with a fixed timeline. Since 2013, the field of automation research has evolved significantly, largely in response to Frey and Osborne's groundbreaking work. Subsequent studies from major institutions like the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, and McKinsey Global Institute have refined the methodology, leading to more nuanced conclusions. The key innovation in these later reports was a shift in focus from analyzing entire jobs to analyzing the individual tasks that make up those jobs. This task-based approach paints a very different picture. An OECD study published in 2016, for instance, re-examined the same data, but concluded that when you look at the specific tasks people do day to day, only about 9% of jobs in the US are highly automatable. This is because very few jobs, less than 1 in 10, consist exclusively of routine, predictable tasks. Most professions are a complex blend of the automatable and the non-automatable. A paralegal might spend part of their day on the automatable task of searching for precedents in legal databases, but they will spend another part of their day on the non-automatable task of communicating empathetically with a distressed client. A truck driver might see the long-haul highway portion of their job automated, but the complex, unpredictable final-mile navigation through a dense city and the interpersonal task of coordinating with warehouse staff remains stubbornly difficult to automate. McKinsey's research tells a similar story. They estimate that while nearly half of all work activities could be automated with existing technology, only about 5% of occupations can be fully automated. For the vast majority, around 60% of jobs, at least 1/3 of their constituent activities could be automated. This supports the idea of a future of job transformation, not elimination. The job of the paralegal and the truck driver won't disappear, but it will fundamentally change. The value of their work will shift to the tasks that require uniquely human skills: social intelligence, creativity, complex problem solving, and adaptability. This refined understanding doesn't dismiss the original Oxford prophecy, but it places it in a more realistic context. The 47% figure was a powerful and necessary wake-up call that highlighted the sheer technological potential. The later studies, with their focus on tasks and real-world barriers, provide a more practical roadmap for what is likely to happen. The coming decade will not be defined by a sudden extinction event for half of all jobs. Instead, it will be defined by a profound and sometimes jarring reorganization of almost every job, as the automatable tasks are steadily stripped away, leaving a core of essentially human work behind. The challenge, then, is not about preparing for unemployment, but about preparing for a perpetual state of skill evolution. To move from abstract probabilities to concrete realities, we need to look at the tools themselves. The current wave of automation is not a single, monolithic force. It is an ecosystem of different technologies, each with its own unique capabilities, limitations, and timeline for maturation. Understanding these tools is the key to understanding the specific ways in which work will change. We can broadly categorize this AI toolkit into 3 domains: cognitive, physical, and sensory. First, and most prominently in the public consciousness, is the domain of cognitive labor, dominated by large language models, or LLMs. These are the systems like OpenAI's GPT-4, Anthropic's Claude 3, and Google's Gemini. They are trained on vast data sets of text and code from the internet, allowing them to understand and generate human-like language with astonishing fluency. Their core capability is probabilistic pattern matching on a massive scale. When you ask one of these models a question, it is not thinking in a human sense. It is calculating the most likely sequence of words to form a coherent and relevant answer based on the patterns it has learned. In practice, this has unlocked the ability to automate a wide range of knowledge work tasks. In the legal profession, LLMs are now used to review thousands of documents for discovery in a fraction of the time it would take a team of paralegals. They can draft initial versions of contracts, summarize case law, and generate legal memos. In accounting, they can automate data entry, generate financial reports, and even answer complex tax questions by referencing vast regulatory documents. For software engineers, Tools like GitHub Copilot, powered by LLMs, act as an AI pair programmer, suggesting lines or even entire functions of code in real time, dramatically speeding up the development process. However, their limitations are just as important as their capabilities. LLMs are prone to hallucination, where they confidently state incorrect information as fact because it is probabilistically plausible. They lack true common sense reasoning and a real-world understanding of the concepts they manipulate. This makes them powerful assistants, but unreliable decision-makers. The work of a lawyer is not just to find a precedent, but to know if it's truly applicable. The work of an accountant is not just to generate a report, but to use professional skepticism to question the numbers. The work of a programmer is not just to write code, but to understand the system architecture and the business logic behind it. For the foreseeable future, these models will function as incredibly powerful productivity tools that augment human experts, automating the 80% of routine cognitive work and freeing up humans to focus on the critical 20% that requires judgment, strategy, and accountability. The second domain is physical labor, the world of robotics. For decades, industrial robots have been a mainstay in manufacturing, performing highly repetitive tasks like welding car bodies on an assembly line. These robots operate in meticulously structured environments where every variable is controlled. The great challenge and the focus of current innovation is creating robots that can function in the chaotic, unpredictable environments of human life. This is the realm of humanoid robotics, exemplified by projects like Tesla's Optimus, Agility Robotics Digit, and Figure 01. The goal of these projects is to create a general-purpose robot that can use human tools and navigate human spaces. Recent demonstrations have shown impressive progress. We've seen Figure's robot, integrated with OpenAI's visual and language understanding, hold a conversation while tidying up dishes. We've seen Tesla's Optimus carefully folding a t-shirt. These are remarkable engineering feats. However, it's crucial to distinguish between a controlled demonstration and robust, real-world deployment. The actions are still slow, sometimes clumsy, and require immense computational power. They are currently best suited for highly structured tasks in environments like warehouses and logistics centers, where they can move boxes or manage inventory. The dream of a robot plumber who can come into your home, diagnose a unique leak under the sink, and improvise a solution with the tools available is still decades away. This is due to a concept known as Moravec's paradox, which observes that in robotics, the things that are hard for humans, like complex calculations, are easy for machines, while things that are easy for humans, like walking on uneven ground, picking up a strangely shaped object, or understanding the intention of another person, are incredibly difficult for machines. So, while automation will continue to advance in predictable physical domains like manufacturing and logistics, jobs that require complex manual dexterity in unstructured environments, plumbers, electricians, gardeners, surgeons, remain remarkably safe from automation for the time being. The third, and perhaps most mature domain, is sensory and analytical AI. This is where AI is not replacing the human, but augmenting human perception and analysis to a superhuman degree. The classic example is in radiology. An AI model trained on millions of medical scans can detect signs of disease, like cancerous tumors in an X-ray or signs of diabetic retinopathy in an eye scan, with an accuracy that often exceeds that of a human expert. It can spot subtle patterns that are invisible to the human eye. This technology is not designed to replace the radiologist. Instead, it acts as an indispensable diagnostic assistant. The AI can perform a first-pass analysis on hundreds of scans, flagging the ones that require urgent human attention and highlighting areas of concern. This allows the human radiologist to focus their expertise where it is most needed, acting as the final arbiter and integrating the AI's findings with the patient's broader medical context. This model of human-AI collaboration is a powerful template for the future of many expert professions. We will see it in geology, where AI analyzes seismic data to predict earthquakes; in finance, where it detects fraudulent transactions in real time; and in agriculture, where it uses drone imagery to identify crop disease long before a human farmer could. In each of these cases, the AI handles the massive scale of data processing and pattern recognition, while the human provides the context, the strategic oversight, and the ethical judgment. This synergy elevates the capabilities of the professional, allowing them to make better, faster, and more informed decisions. The AI toolkit, therefore, is not a single hammer looking for nails. It is a diverse set of instruments, each suited to different tasks. By understanding what each tool does well, and just as importantly, what it does poorly, we can begin to see the true, nuanced shape of the future of work. A future defined less by replacement and more by a fundamental redesign of the partnership between human and machine intelligence. The raw capability of a technology is only one part of the equation. A chasm often exists between what is possible in a laboratory and what is practical in the messy reality of our global economy. Several powerful forces act as brakes, slowing the timeline of automation and shaping the path of its deployment. These obstacles are not mere footnotes to the story of technological progress. They are central to it, ensuring that the transition, while profound, will be more gradual and uneven than the most breathless headlines suggest. The first and most significant barrier is economics. The deployment of cutting-edge AI and robotics at a scale sufficient to transform entire industries requires a staggering amount of capital investment. Building and operating the massive data centers that power large language models is an enterprise of immense expense. According to analysis from the research group Epoch, the computing power used to train leading AI models has been doubling, roughly every 6 months, a pace far exceeding Moore's law. This translates into titanic energy consumption. A 2023 study from the University of California, Riverside, estimated that training a single model like GPT-3 consumed the equivalent of the annual electricity usage of over 100 US homes, along with vast quantities of water for cooling these server farms. For a business, the decision to invest in this technology is not taken lightly. The cost of licensing sophisticated AI models, integrating them into existing workflows, and training staff to use them effectively must be weighed against the tangible productivity gains. For physical automation, the calculation is even starker. A state-of-the-art humanoid robot can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, not including the ongoing expenses for maintenance, software updates, and the specialized technicians required to keep it running. A small business owner running a restaurant or a construction company will not invest in a robotic assistant until its total cost of ownership is demonstrably and significantly lower than the wages of a human employee. This simple economic friction means that adoption will happen first in high-wage, high-margin sectors, and will only slowly trickle down to the rest of the economy as the technology becomes cheaper and more reliable over many years, if not decades. The second major obstacle lies in the realm of regulation and law. Our legal and ethical frameworks evolve at a human pace, which is orders of magnitude slower than the pace of technological change. This gap creates a landscape of uncertainty that makes companies hesitant to deploy autonomous systems in high-stakes environments. The autonomous vehicle industry is a perfect case study. The core technology for self-driving cars has been viable for years, yet their widespread adoption is hamstrung by a thicket of unresolved legal questions. If a self-driving car causes a fatal accident, who is legally responsible? Is it the owner who failed to take over? Is it the automaker who designed the hardware? Is it the software company that wrote the decision-making algorithm? Or is it the city that failed to maintain clear road markings? Until these questions of liability are codified into law, the risk for manufacturers and insurers is simply too high for mass deployment. We see the same dynamic playing out in other fields. In medicine, how does a hospital manage the liability of an AI diagnostic tool that misreads a scan? In finance, who is accountable if a trading algorithm malfunctions and destabilizes a market? Crafting sensible, robust, and internationally recognized regulations for these technologies is a slow, contentious process involving lawmakers, industry experts, ethicists, and the public. This deliberate and necessary process of building a legal and social consensus will act as a powerful governor on the speed of AI's integration into the most critical sectors of our society. It ensures that we don't rush headlong into a future whose consequences we haven't fully considered. Finally, and perhaps most enduringly, we come up against the human element, encapsulated by what is known as Moravec's paradox. As we touched upon, this is the strange inversion where machines find it easy to perform tasks that humans find difficult, like advanced mathematics or perfect memory recall, while struggling immensely with tasks that a toddler finds effortless, like recognizing a face, picking up a toy, or understanding a simple story. This paradox reveals a fundamental truth about the nature of intelligence. Our human intelligence is not just about raw computation. It is deeply embodied. It is the product of millions of years of evolution, shaping our ability to perceive, move, and interact with a complex and dynamic physical world. This is why a robot still struggles to walk over uneven terrain with the grace of a human, or to distinguish a ripe avocado from a hard one by touch alone. It's also why AI struggles with the nuanced, unspoken rules of human social interaction. AIs can be trained to recognize the words in a negotiation, but they cannot yet truly understand the subtle cues, the shift in tone of voice, the slight hesitation, the body language, that signal a change in the other person's position. They can't replicate the empathy of a nurse holding a patient's hand, the creative spark of a scientist connecting two disparate ideas, or the inspirational leadership of a manager motivating their team through a difficult period. These skills, which we often undervalue because they feel so natural to us, are the bedrock of human advantage. They are computationally expensive and incredibly difficult to reverse engineer. This means that any job where the core value lies in physical dexterity, emotional intelligence, complex problem solving in unpredictable situations, or deep human-to-human connection has a powerful, built-in defense against automation. The timeline for automating the work of a carpenter, a preschool teacher, A therapist or a senior strategist is vastly longer than that for a data entry clerk or a telemarketer. These deep-seated human abilities form the final and most formidable obstacle, ensuring that even in a world of advanced AI, the future of work will, for a very long time, remain profoundly human. These three barriers, economic, regulatory, and the paradox of human skill, collectively ensure that the story of automation will be one of evolution, not revolution. Understanding the technological tools and the obstacles to their deployment allows us to move from a general discussion to a more specific mapping of the professional shockwave. The impact of automation will not be a uniform tide rising at the same level across the entire economy. Instead, it will be a complex weather system with intense storms in some areas, gentle rain in others, and clear skies in the most resilient regions. A calm, task-based analysis helps us see which professions are in the direct path of this change and why others remain on higher ground. Let's begin with the professions often cited as being at high risk. Truck driving is a quintessential example. The image of autonomous, long-haul trucks traversing highways seems like a near-term inevitability. The task of driving for hundreds of miles on a relatively predictable interstate is well suited for current AI capabilities. However, a closer look reveals a crucial distinction between long-haul and last-mile delivery. While the highway portion of the journey may become automated, the final leg, navigating a truck through congested city streets, backing into a non-standard loading dock, and coordinating with warehouse staff, is a far more complex challenge that taps directly into Moravec's paradox. This suggests a future where the job of a truck driver evolves. It might split into two roles: a convoy operator, who remotely monitors a fleet of autonomous trucks on the highway, and a highly skilled urban logistics specialist who takes control for the complex final mile. The job doesn't vanish, it transforms and bifurcates. A similar pattern emerges in the world of accounting. The task of data entry, bank reconciliation, and generating standard financial statements is rapidly being automated by sophisticated accounting software and AI. The bookkeeper or junior accountant focused solely on these routine tasks is in a precarious position. Yet, the role of the senior accountant or the strategic financial advisor becomes more valuable than ever. As the routine data processing is handled by machines, their work shifts entirely to the human-centric tasks of interpretation, strategy, and communication. Their value lies in explaining what the numbers mean for the business, advising on complex tax strategies, negotiating with auditors, and providing the kind of forward-looking financial counsel that requires a deep understanding of the business's context and goals. Here again, the profession is not being eliminated. It is being cleaved, with the lower value, routine tasks being automated away, forcing human practitioners to move up the value chain towards strategic advisory roles. Even in a high-tech field like software engineering, this dynamic is at play. AI coding assistants like GitHub Copilot can now generate vast amounts of boilerplate code, write unit tests, and even debug simple problems. This dramatically increases the productivity of an individual programmer. A junior developer whose primary skill is simply writing basic, well-understood code will face immense pressure, as their output can be replicated by an AI. However, the role of the senior software architect becomes even more critical. Their job is not just to write code, but to design, complex, scalable, and secure systems. It's about understanding the intricate dependencies between different parts of a software ecosystem, making trade-offs between performance and maintainability, and leading a team of engineers toward a common goal. These tasks of high-level design, systems thinking, and human coordination are not currently within the grasp of AI, making them the new safe havens within the profession. In contrast, there are professional domains that are naturally more resilient to this shockwave. These are the roles rich in the skills that are hardest to automate: deep emotional intelligence, complex strategy, and open-ended creative problem-solving. Consider the work of a therapist or a mental health counselor. Their effectiveness is not based on access to information, which an AI could easily provide, but on the ability to build a relationship of trust and empathy. It's about reading the subtle, nonverbal cues of a patient, understanding their unique emotional context, and providing guidance that is deeply attuned to their human experience. While an AI might one day serve as a useful support tool, the core of the therapeutic alliance is fundamentally, irreducibly human. Similarly, the role of a senior manager or a C-suite executive is insulated not because of their technical knowledge, but because their primary function is navigating complex human systems. It involves inspiring a team, negotiating high-stakes deals, formulating a multi-year corporate strategy in the face of uncertainty, and acting as the public face of an organization. These are tasks steeped in social intelligence, intuition, and a nuanced understanding of human motivation. The same resilience applies to many creative and scientific roles. While an AI can generate 1,000 images in a particular style, it is the human artist who creates a new style altogether. While an AI can analyze vast data sets to find correlations, it is the human scientist who formulates the novel hypothesis to test in the first place, driven by curiosity and a deep, intuitive understanding of their field. Finally, it's essential to consider the generational impact of this transition. The experience of this shockwave will be vastly different for a baby boomer nearing retirement compared to a member of Gen Z just entering the workforce. For many boomers in professional roles, the changes will likely manifest as the introduction of new software tools that augment their existing skills, allowing them to finish their careers with increased productivity. The fundamental structure of their job may not change dramatically before they retire. For Gen Z, however, the landscape is entirely different. They are entering a labor market where the concept of a stable, long-term career path is already eroding. The skills that are valuable on the day they graduate may be partially automated within 5 years. For this generation, the most critical skill will not be mastery of a specific domain, but rather the meta-skill of continuous learning and adaptation. Their career will not be a single ladder to climb, but a series of lily pads to jump between, requiring them to constantly reskill and reinvent their professional identity. This places an immense burden on our educational systems to prepare them not for the jobs of today, but for a lifetime of navigating a perpetually shifting professional world. The map of the future of work is not one of simple erasure, but one of complex, dynamic, and deeply human reorganization. The professional shockwave we've mapped does more than just reconfigure job descriptions. It sends tremors deep into the cultural bedrock of our society, challenging our fundamental definitions of work, value, and personal identity. For much of the 20th century, The dominant model of a successful life was built around the idea of a job for life. One would receive an education, enter a profession, and then climb a predictable career ladder within a single company or industry until retirement. This model provided not just economic stability, but also a profound sense of identity and social standing. When asked, "Who are you?" the answer was often, "I am a lawyer," "I am a teacher," or "I work for Ford." This structure, while rigid, offered a clear and comforting script for navigating one's adult life. That script is now being irrevocably rewritten. The accelerated pace of technological change is dissolving the very notion of a static lifelong career. In its place, a new model is emerging: the portfolio of skills. In this new paradigm, career security is no longer derived from loyalty to a single employer or mastery of a single, unchanging craft. Instead, it comes from cultivating a diverse and adaptable set of skills that can be deployed in various contexts. Your professional identity is not your job title. It is the unique combination of abilities you possess. You are no longer just a graphic designer. You are a creative professional with skills in visual communication, project management, client negotiation, and prompting generative AI tools. This portfolio is not static. It is a living thing that must be constantly updated, with old skills being retired and new ones being acquired as the technological landscape shifts. This cultural shift toward continuous learning is perhaps the most significant adaptation required of the modern workforce. The idea that education is something that ends in one's early 20s is becoming dangerously obsolete. Lifelong learning is transforming from a personal development buzzword into a core economic necessity. The successful professional of the 2030s will be a perpetual student, comfortable with the process of unlearning old methods and embracing new tools. This requires a psychological shift from viewing one's skills as a fixed asset to seeing them as a renewable resource, constantly in need of cultivation. It demands a comfort with ambiguity and a willingness to remain a novice in some areas, even while being an expert in others. This profound shift in the nature of work presents an existential challenge to our traditional education systems. For centuries, universities and schools have operated on a just-in-case model of education. They aim to front-load a student with a large body of static knowledge in history, in chemistry, in literature, just in case they might need it later in life. This model was well suited for a world of slower change, but it is breaking down in an era where the specific knowledge required for a job can become obsolete in a matter of years. Access to information is no longer the bottleneck. A smartphone provides more raw information than any university library could. The new bottleneck is the ability to make sense of that information. Consequently, the mission of education must pivot from teaching static knowledge to fostering durable, transferable skills. These are the skills that remain valuable even when the technological tools change. They include critical thinking, the ability to evaluate information, identify biases, and construct a coherent argument. They include collaboration, the ability to work effectively in diverse teams, to communicate clearly, and to integrate different perspectives. They include creativity, the ability to generate novel ideas and solve unstructured problems. And increasingly, they include digital literacy, not just knowing how to use the software of today, but understanding the fundamental principles of how digital systems work so that one can adapt to the software of tomorrow. This requires a move away from rote memorization and standardized testing and toward project-based learning, interdisciplinary studies, and a pedagogical approach that prizes asking good questions over knowing the right answers. Educational institutions will need to become more modular and accessible, offering not just four-year degrees, but also shorter, targeted credential programs and on-demand upskilling modules that allow people to learn throughout their entire lives. The university of the future may look less like an isolated campus and more like a lifelong learning partner, deeply integrated with the industries it serves. Perhaps the deepest and most difficult challenge in this transition is the psychological one. For generations, we have built our sense of self-worth and purpose around our professional contributions. The daily rhythm of work provides structure, social connection, and a tangible sense of accomplishment. What happens to our individual and collective psyche when these traditional structures become less central to daily life? If AI-driven productivity allows for the possibility of shorter work weeks or more frequent career breaks, we may find ourselves with more leisure time than ever before. On the surface, this sounds like a utopian ideal, but it also raises profound questions. How do we, as a society, find purpose and meaning outside of the traditional 9-to-5? This is not merely a question of finding hobbies. It's about cultivating a new social ethos that decouples human value from economic output. It may require us to place a higher societal value on activities that are not typically compensated by the market, caring for family and community, engaging in creative pursuits, participating in civic life, or simply engaging in deep, reflective thought. The transition could also lead to a crisis of identity for those whose skills are displaced. A craftsman who has spent 30 years perfecting their trade derives a deep sense of pride and identity from that mastery. If that craft is suddenly devalued by automation, the loss is not just financial, it is deeply personal. As a society, we must find ways to honor the dignity of all individuals, regardless of their role in the formal economy. This may involve creating new avenues for contribution and recognition, fostering community-based projects, and building a culture that celebrates a wider range of human talents than just those that are commercially valuable. Navigating this psychological landscape and redefining our relationship with work itself may ultimately be the most complex and important task in adapting to our automated future. The structures we have built around work are not laws of nature. They are social constructs. And as our technological capabilities change, so too can we choose to change the constructs we live by. The redefinition of work at a personal and cultural level is mirrored by a profound restructuring of the economic landscape itself. The integration of advanced AI into the machinery of commerce raises a fundamental question that echoes through the history of capitalism. Who benefits from the gains in productivity? This is the modern iteration of the productivity paradox. In theory, AI-driven efficiency should be a tide that lifts all boats. By automating routine tasks and augmenting human capabilities, AI has the potential to unlock unprecedented levels of economic output, leading to widespread prosperity, lower prices for goods and services, and perhaps even the realization of John Maynard Keynes's 1930 prediction of a 15-hour workweek. In this optimistic scenario, the economic pie grows so large that there is more for everyone. The wealth generated by automation could be used to fund stronger social safety nets invest in massive public works, and provide universal access to high-quality education and healthcare. However, there is an alternative, more cautionary scenario. History has shown that the gains from technological revolutions are not always distributed evenly. The critical variable is the relationship between capital and labor. If the owners of the AI systems and robotic infrastructure capture the vast majority of the productivity gains in the form of profits, while the value of human labor stagnates or declines, we could see a dramatic widening of the wealth gap. The returns could flow primarily to a small class of investors, technologists, and executives, while the broader population faces wage pressures and increased job insecurity. This outcome is not a technological inevitability. It is a result of policy choices regarding taxation, corporate governance, and labor rights. The path we take will depend on the social and political structures we build around the technology, determining whether AI becomes a tool for shared prosperity or a driver of unprecedented economic inequality. This potential for growing inequality is closely linked to another major economic trend: labor market polarization. For the past several decades, well before the rise of modern AI, economists like David Autor from MIT have been documenting the hollowing out of the middle-skill job market. Automation and globalization have steadily eroded the number of routine, manual, and clerical jobs that once formed the backbone of the middle class in developed economies. These are jobs that involve following a clear set of rules and procedures, making them ripe for automation. Think of assembly line work, data entry, or basic administrative support. What's left is a polarized or barbell economy. At one end, you have a growing number of high-skill, high-paying jobs that rely on creativity, abstract reasoning, and complex communication. The work of managers, scientists, artists, and strategists. These roles are often complemented and made more productive by technology. At the other end, you have a persistent number of low-paying, in-person service jobs that, due to Moravec's paradox, have proven surprisingly difficult to automate. These are the roles in food service, elder care, hospitality, and janitorial services, which require physical dexterity and direct human interaction. The danger is that the middle rungs of the economic ladder, the stable jobs that once provided a clear path to upward mobility, are disappearing. Advanced AI has the potential to accelerate this trend dramatically. Many of the white-collar, middle-skill jobs that have so far been insulated, like paralegal work, bookkeeping, and even some aspects of journalism, are now facing the same pressures that blue-collar manufacturing jobs faced a generation ago. Without a concerted effort to build new pathways for skill development and career transition, we risk creating a society with a permanent chasm between the high-paid, creative class and a large, low-wage service sector, with very little in between. This hollowing out of the middle is not just an economic problem, it's a social and political one, as it can erode social cohesion and fuel political polarization. However, the economic story is not solely one of disruption and polarization. Just as in every previous technological revolution, the same forces that destroy old jobs are simultaneously creating entirely new industries and job categories, some of which we can't even imagine today. The internet didn't just disrupt the newspaper and travel agency industries. It created the entirely new professions of search engine optimization specialist, social media manager, and cloud computing engineer. The same creative destruction is happening now. We are witnessing the birth of a massive new economic sector dedicated to building, maintaining, and governing the AI economy itself. Consider the new roles already emerging. Prompt engineers are becoming essential for crafting the precise instructions needed to elicit the best results from generative AI models. AI ethicists and algorithmic auditors are being hired by large corporations to ensure their systems are fair, transparent, and aligned with human values. Data storytellers are needed to translate the complex outputs of AI analysis into compelling narratives that business leaders can understand and act upon. On the more technical side, there is a booming demand for machine learning engineers, robotics technicians, and data scientists to build and refine the underlying systems. Beyond these direct AI-related jobs, entire secondary and tertiary industries will emerge. A world with advanced AI will need new forms of education, new types of cybersecurity to protect against AI-powered threats, and new legal specialties focused on AI-related disputes. The entertainment industry will be revolutionized by AI-generated content, creating roles for virtual world designers and synthetic media artists. This process of new market creation is the great, often underestimated counterbalance to job displacement. The key economic challenge is one of transition, ensuring that the workforce has the skills and support needed to move from the shrinking industries of the old economy to the growing industries of the new one. The new landscape will be different, with new peaks and valleys, but it need not be barren. The shape of this new economy is still being drawn, and the lines are not yet fixed. Through intentional investment in education, entrepreneurship, and equitable policy, we have the opportunity to sculpt a landscape that is not only more productive, but also more inclusive and resilient. Navigating this new economic landscape requires a shift in perspective, moving from a position of passive anxiety to one of active strategy. While the macro-level changes can feel overwhelming, at the individual and organizational level, there are clear, actionable pathways for adapting and thriving. These pathways are not mutually exclusive. In fact, the most resilient careers of the future will likely blend elements of all three. We can think of them as three fundamental survival strategies: augment and collaborate, lean into human connection, and build the system. The first and most immediately accessible strategy is to augment and collaborate. This approach does not require becoming a machine learning expert. Instead, it focuses on developing the skills to work with artificial intelligence, using it as a tool to amplify one's own productivity, creativity, and strategic insight. This is the path of the AI-assisted professional, and it represents the most likely evolution for the majority of knowledge workers. It is about embracing AI not as a competitor, but as a powerful, tireless intern. Consider the financial analyst of the near future. They will no longer spend the bulk of their time manually gathering data from disparate sources and building complex spreadsheet models. An AI will do that in seconds. Instead, the analyst's value will come from their ability to ask the right questions of the AI, to critically evaluate the model's output, to spot the subtle anomaly or flawed assumption that the machine missed, and to weave the AI-generated data into a compelling strategic narrative for their clients or leadership team. Their core skills shift from technical execution to strategic curation and communication. To pursue this strategy, the key is to cultivate a mindset of prompt literacy and critical AI evaluation. This means learning how to craft effective prompts to get the most out of generative models, understanding the inherent biases and limitations of these systems, and developing a strong sense of professional judgment to know when to trust the AI's output and when to override it. It also means actively identifying the most tedious, repetitive, and data-intensive parts of one's current job and proactively seeking out AI tools to automate them. By offloading the routine cognitive labor to the machine, professionals can free up their time and mental energy to focus on the higher-level, uniquely human tasks: strategy, creativity, and complex problem-solving that are becoming the new currency of the workplace. This is not about being replaced by AI. It is about promoting oneself to be the manager of an AI. The second strategy is to lean into human connection. This path involves deliberately choosing and cultivating skills and professions that are centered on the very things machines cannot replicate: deep empathy, nuanced social interaction, and the building of genuine human relationships. As AI handles more of the analytical and routine tasks, the economic and social value of these essentially human skills is likely to increase dramatically. This is a powerful counter-movement to the tide of automation, doubling down on our own humanity. Think of the roles in the care economy. The work of an early childhood educator is not simply to transmit information, but to foster a safe, nurturing environment where a child can develop socially and emotionally. The work of an elder care provider is not just about administering medication, but about providing companionship, dignity, and a compassionate human presence. Similarly, roles like executive coaches, therapists, and conflict mediators are built on a foundation of trust and interpersonal nuance that is far beyond the reach of current AI. This strategy is not limited to the caring professions. In business, the salesperson who can build a long-term, trust-based relationship with a client will always outperform a chatbot. The manager who can inspire and motivate their team through genuine connection will be more valuable than one who simply optimizes workflows. Even in technical fields, the collaborator who can effectively bridge communication gaps between different teams is indispensable. To follow this path, the focus of personal development shifts away from purely technical skills and toward the so-called soft skills that are becoming the new hard skills of the 21st century: active listening, empathetic communication, collaboration, and emotional intelligence. It is about recognizing that in a world of abundant artificial intelligence, our own natural intelligence, especially our social and emotional intelligence, becomes our most precious and economically viable asset. The third and most technically demanding strategy is to build the system. While the first two strategies focus on using AI or working around its limitations, this path involves acquiring the skills to design, deploy, and maintain the AI systems themselves. This is the work of the architects of the new economy. It is the most direct way to participate in the growth of the AI industry, but it also requires the most significant investment in specialized technical education. This category includes a wide spectrum of roles. At the core are the data scientists and machine learning engineers who design the algorithms and train the models. Close to them are the software developers and cloud engineers who build the infrastructure to run these models at scale. Then there are the robotics engineers and hardware specialists who are creating the physical bodies for artificial intelligence. But the builder category is broader than just pure engineering. It also includes the crucial roles of AI product managers who decide what to build, UX designers who create the interfaces that allow humans to interact with AI intuitively, and the previously mentioned AI ethicists and policy specialists who build the governance frameworks to ensure these powerful systems are used responsibly. Pursuing this strategy requires a commitment to deep technical literacy, often involving formal education in computer science, statistics, or engineering. It means staying on the cutting edge of a rapidly evolving field. However, even within this technical domain, the most successful builders will be those who can combine their technical expertise with a deep understanding of human needs and societal context. The best AI systems are not just technical marvels. They are tools that solve real human problems in an elegant and intuitive way. Therefore, even for the builders, the uniquely human skills of empathy, communication, and ethical reasoning remain critically important. These three strategies, augment, connect, and build, are not prescriptive career paths, but rather strategic mindsets. They provide a framework for thinking about personal and professional development in an age of intelligent machines, offering a way to chart a course through the uncertainty with intention and agency. Our exploration of the future of work cannot be complete without examining its deep and often contradictory relationship with the planet's health. The rise of artificial intelligence is not happening in a vacuum. It is unfolding against the backdrop of an escalating climate crisis. The AI revolution and the green transition are the two most powerful transformative forces of our time, and their fates are inextricably linked in a complex dance of consumption and conservation. On one hand, the very infrastructure of artificial intelligence carries a significant and rapidly growing environmental footprint. On the other, AI is emerging as one of our most powerful tools in the fight against climate change. Let's first address the energy cost of intelligence. Large language models and other sophisticated AI systems are not ethereal entities existing in some abstract cloud. They are physical systems running on vast server farms, housed in massive, energy-hungry data centers. The computational process of training a state-of-the-art AI model, like GPT-4, requires sifting through petabytes of data for weeks or months on end, using tens of thousands of specialized processors. The energy required for this process is immense. As mentioned, studies have begun to quantify this, but the true scale is often opaque, hidden behind the corporate secrecy of the tech giants. What is clear is that as models become larger and more capable, their energy and resource demands are growing exponentially. The environmental cost extends beyond just electricity. These data centers also consume vast quantities of fresh water for cooling. A 2023 study from researchers at the University of Colorado and University of Texas estimated that Microsoft's global data centers consumed nearly 1.7 billion gallons of water in 2022 alone. As AI is integrated into more and more everyday applications, from search engines to personal assistants, the constant inference phase, the energy used to run the model and generate answers, will create a baseline energy demand that could strain national power grids. Without a massive and concurrent scale-up of renewable energy sources, the growth of AI could inadvertently lead to an increased reliance on fossil fuels, complicating our efforts to decarbonize the global economy. This presents a profound paradox. The tool that promises to solve our most complex problems is itself contributing to one of the largest. Yet, for all its environmental costs, artificial intelligence is also proving to be an indispensable ally in the quest for sustainability. The same analytical power that requires so much energy can be turned toward the problem of optimizing our energy systems. AI is already being deployed by companies like Google's DeepMind to manage the cooling systems of their own data centers, reducing their energy use by as much as 40%. This is a microcosm of a much broader potential. On a larger scale, AI is being used to make our electrical grids smarter and more efficient. One of the biggest challenges of renewable energy sources like wind and solar is their intermittency. The sun doesn't always shine, and the wind doesn't always blow. AI-powered forecasting models can now predict energy production from renewable sources with incredible accuracy based on complex weather data. They can also predict energy demand on a neighborhood-by-neighborhood basis. By matching supply and demand in real time, these AI systems can help grid operators optimize the distribution of energy, reduce waste, and more seamlessly integrate volatile renewables into the grid, accelerating the transition away from fossil fuels. AI's role as a climate solution extends far beyond the energy sector. In climate science, machine learning models are being used to analyze vast, complex data sets from satellites, ocean buoys, and ground sensors to create more accurate models of climate change. This allows scientists to better predict the impacts of rising temperatures, such as the frequency of extreme weather events or the rate of sea level rise, providing crucial information for policymakers and communities to adapt. In agriculture, AI-powered systems are enabling precision farming, using drones and sensors to monitor crop health and apply water, fertilizers, and pesticides only when and where they are needed, dramatically reducing waste and environmental runoff. AI is also being used to discover new materials for batteries and solar cells, and to design more efficient and sustainable supply chains by optimizing shipping routes to reduce fuel consumption. This duality leads to a fascinating long-term vision: the potential for a circular economy powered and managed by AI. A circular economy is a model of production and consumption that involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, and recycling existing materials and products for as long as possible. The goal is to move away from the linear take, make, dispose model. This is an incredibly complex logistical challenge, requiring the coordination of millions of products, components, and materials across the entire economy. It is a problem of optimization that is perfectly suited for artificial intelligence. Imagine an AI-managed system that tracks products from their creation to their end of life. The AI could predict when a component in a machine is about to fail and proactively schedule maintenance. It could manage product-as-a-service models, where consumers lease rather than own products like washing machines or electronics, with the AI coordinating their return, refurbishment, and redeployment. It could optimize recycling systems, using computer vision to sort materials with superhuman accuracy and efficiency. In this scenario, AI is not just a tool for incremental improvements. It becomes the central nervous system of a fundamentally more sustainable economic model, minimizing waste and decoupling economic growth from resource consumption. The environmental equation of AI is therefore not a simple one. It is a high-stakes balancing act. The development and deployment of AI represent both a significant new load on our planet's resources and one of our most promising instruments for building a sustainable future. The challenge for technologists, policymakers, and citizens is to steer the development of this powerful technology in a direction that minimizes its own footprint while maximizing its positive impact on our shared planetary home. The ultimate outcome, whether AI proves to be a net positive or a net negative for the environment, is not yet written. It will depend on the choices we make today about how we power, regulate, and prioritize the applications of this transformative technology. It is a reminder that our technological future and our ecological future are not separate paths. They are one and the same. The profound economic and environmental shifts driven by AI inevitably lead to a critical question of governance. How should society manage such a powerful, disruptive force? As technology redefines the relationship between capital, labor, and the state, our existing models of social support and corporate responsibility are being tested to their limits. This forces a necessary and urgent conversation about the role of government and the ethical obligations of the private sector in navigating this transition. The central governance dilemma is how to harness the immense productivity gains of automation for the public good, ensuring a future that is not only prosperous, but also equitable and just. One of the most prominent and debated policy proposals to address large-scale labor displacement is Universal Basic Income, or UBI. The concept is simple. The government would provide every citizen with a regular, unconditional sum of money, regardless of their employment status. Proponents, who range from Silicon Valley technologists to Nobel laureate economists, argue that UBI would create a crucial economic floor, providing a safety net that decouples basic survival from the volatility of the job market. It would give individuals the financial stability to pursue education, start a new business, or engage in valuable but uncompensated work like caregiving. Small-scale UBI trials, such as the one in Stockton, California, have shown promising results, with participants reporting improved mental and physical health and increased financial stability, often using the money to pay down debt or cover unexpected expenses. The Finnish basic income experiment, while more complex in its findings, also showed modest positive effects on well-being. However, critics raise significant concerns about the fiscal sustainability of a nationwide UBI program, which could cost trillions of dollars annually. They also worry about potential disincentives to work and the inflationary pressures that could arise from injecting such a large amount of cash into the economy. As an alternative, some economists propose more targeted solutions, like a negative income tax, which would provide cash benefits only to those below a certain income threshold, or robust, government-funded reskilling and lifelong learning programs designed to help workers adapt to the changing demands of the labor market. There is no easy answer, and the debate over which approach, or combination of approaches, is best will likely be one of the defining political questions of the coming decades. Beyond the role of the state, a parallel conversation is emerging around the principle of corporate responsibility. If a small number of technology companies stand to generate unprecedented wealth by developing and deploying automation technologies that displace millions of workers, what, if any, is their ethical obligation to the society that enabled their success? The argument for corporate responsibility holds that these companies have a duty to help manage the transition they are accelerating. This could take many forms, Some have proposed an automation tax or a robot tax, where companies would pay a levy on the profits generated by automation, with the resulting revenue used to fund social programs or worker retraining initiatives. Another approach focuses on corporate-led upskilling programs. Companies like Amazon and Microsoft have already invested billions of dollars in initiatives to retrain their own workforces for the more highly skilled jobs of the future. This model sees workforce transition not as an externality to be managed by the government, but as a core business function, an investment in the company's own future talent pipeline. A deeper, more systemic form of corporate responsibility involves a shift in corporate governance itself, moving away from a sole focus on maximizing shareholder value toward a stakeholder capitalism model where companies are accountable not just to their investors, but also to their employees, customers, and the communities in which they operate. This would mean that decisions about deploying automation would have to consider the impact on employees and society, not just the effect on the bottom line. This debate challenges the very purpose of a corporation in the 21st century, asking whether its role is simply to generate profit or to serve a broader social purpose. The governance dilemma is not just about economics. It is also about justice and fairness. As AI systems are increasingly used to make critical decisions about people's lives, in hiring, in loan applications, in criminal justice, the challenge of algorithmic bias becomes paramount. AI models learn from the data they are trained on. If that data reflects existing societal biases, the AI will not only replicate those biases, but can also amplify them at a massive scale. For example, if an AI hiring tool is trained on the historical hiring data of a company that has predominantly hired men for technical roles, the AI will learn to associate male candidates with success and may systematically discriminate against equally qualified female applicants. This creates a significant governance challenge. How do we ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability in our algorithmic systems? This has led to the emergence of a new field of AI auditing and regulation. The European Union has taken a leading role with its proposed AI Act, which aims to classify AI systems by risk level and impose strict requirements for transparency and human oversight on high-risk applications. Companies are beginning to establish internal AI ethics boards to review their systems for bias. The goal is to build a framework for explainable AI, XAI, where the decisions made by a complex algorithm can be understood and challenged by a human. Ensuring that the efficiency of AI does not come at the cost of fairness is one of the most complex technical and ethical challenges of our time. It requires a multifaceted approach involving robust regulation, industry standards, and a new generation of technologists trained not just in coding, but also in ethics. Ultimately, the governance of AI is not a problem that can be solved by any single entity. It requires a new social contract, a collaborative effort between governments, corporations, and civil society. Governments must create the regulatory frameworks and social safety nets. Corporations must embrace a broader sense of responsibility for the impacts of their technologies, and citizens must be educated and empowered to participate in shaping the future of these powerful tools. The choices we make in this domain will determine whether the AI revolution leads to a more equitable society or exacerbates the divisions that already exist. The narrative of automation and its impact on work is not a single, universal story. It is a tale of many futures, unfolding differently across the diverse economic, cultural, and demographic landscapes of our world. The way this transition is experienced in a tech-heavy, developed nation like the United States will be vastly different from its impact on a manufacturing-based, developing economy like Vietnam, or an aging, demographically challenged society like Japan. Understanding these global perspectives is crucial to appreciating the full complexity of the coming changes. The AI revolution, while global in its reach, is profoundly local in its effects. A primary fault line in this global story is the division between developed and developing nations. For countries at the forefront of AI development, like the United States and China, automation presents a dual opportunity to enhance productivity at home and to reinforce their economic and geopolitical leadership abroad. These nations possess the capital, the research institutions, and the talent pools to build and deploy advanced AI systems. For them, the primary challenge is a domestic one: managing the internal labor market transitions and ensuring the gains from automation are shared equitably among their own citizens. For many developing nations, however, the picture is more complicated. Countries that have built their economic growth models on the foundation of low-cost labor for manufacturing and business process outsourcing face a significant threat. For decades, the established path to development involved moving from agriculture to export-oriented manufacturing, as seen in the rise of the Asian tigers. This model relies on a country's comparative advantage in labor costs. But as robotics and automation become cheaper and more capable, that advantage begins to erode. A German company that once offshored its manufacturing to Mexico might find it more economical to reshore its production to a fully automated factory in Germany, eliminating shipping costs and supply chain vulnerabilities. Similarly, the call center industry in countries like the Philippines and India is facing direct pressure from increasingly sophisticated conversational AI. This could potentially close off a traditional and vital pathway to economic development for a significant portion of the world's population, creating new challenges for global inequality. Cultural and political differences also play a significant role in shaping the adoption and governance of AI. We can see a stark contrast between the approaches of the world's two AI superpowers, China and the United States, with the European Union offering a distinct third model. China is pursuing a top-down, state-driven strategy. Through initiatives like its New Generation Artificial Intelligence Development Plan, the Chinese government is investing massive resources to achieve global leadership in AI by 2030. This approach allows for rapid, coordinated implementation of AI across industries and in public services, from smart city infrastructure to a nationwide social credit system. The focus is on speed, scale, and national strategic advantage, with less public debate around issues of individual privacy or algorithmic bias compared to Western nations. The United States, in contrast, has a more bottom-up, market-driven approach. Innovation is largely led by a handful of giant private technology companies like Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI, fueled by venture capital and fierce competition. The government's role has historically been more hands-off, focused on funding basic research and promoting a pro-innovation environment, although this is slowly shifting toward a greater focus on regulation and strategic competition with China. This model fosters rapid innovation and dynamism, but can also lead to the concentration of power in a few corporate hands and a slower, more fragmented response to the social and ethical challenges. The European Union, meanwhile, is charting a third path, positioning itself as the world's leading regulator of technology. Through policies like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and the new AI Act, the EU is focused on creating a human-centric framework for AI that prioritizes safety, fairness, and fundamental rights. Their approach is more cautious and deliberative, seeking to build public trust before allowing widespread deployment of high-risk AI systems. While this may slow the pace of innovation compared to the US and China, the EU hopes to create a gold standard for trustworthy AI that could become a model for the rest of the world, a phenomenon known as the Brussels effect. These divergent approaches will shape not only the technological development, but also the social character of AI in different parts of the globe. Finally, demographic realities are a powerful, often overlooked, driver of automation strategy. The challenges and opportunities of AI look very different in a country with a young, growing workforce versus one with an aging, shrinking population. For a country like Nigeria or India, with a massive youth population entering the job market each year, rapid automation could exacerbate unemployment and social instability if new job creation doesn't keep pace. The policy focus in such nations must be on education and creating AI-enabled opportunities for entrepreneurship at a massive scale. In stark contrast, countries like Japan, Germany, and South Korea face the opposite problem: a rapidly aging society and a shrinking workforce. For these nations, automation is not primarily seen as a threat, but as a demographic and economic necessity. There simply are not enough young workers to fill the roles needed to care for the elderly, run the factories, and drive the economy. In Japan, this has led to a strong cultural acceptance of and significant government investment in robotics, particularly in fields like elder care and companionship. In this context, robots are not seen as taking jobs from humans, but as filling a critical gap, enabling elderly citizens to live with more independence and dignity, and freeing up human caregivers to focus on the more compassionate, relational aspects of their work. This demographic lens shows that automation is not an abstract technological force, but a tool that societies will adopt and shape to meet their most pressing and specific local needs. The global story of AI is not one of uniform progress or peril. It is a rich and varied tapestry, woven from the unique economic ambitions, cultural values, and demographic destinies of nations around the world. Understanding this diversity is key to moving beyond a one-size-fits-all view of the future of work. As we peer into the coming decade, the path forward is not a single, predetermined line, but a branching set of possibilities. To navigate this uncertainty, it is useful to explore plausible scenarios, not as predictions, but as thought experiments that illuminate the potential consequences of our current choices. The first of these, a more cautionary tale, we can call the Great Displacement. This is the future that animates our deepest anxieties about automation. It is a scenario characterized by a rapid, poorly managed transition, where the pace of technological job displacement significantly outstrips the creation of new jobs, leading to a period of sustained structural unemployment. In this future, the economic and regulatory brakes we discussed fail to hold. Breakthroughs in artificial general intelligence and robotics happen faster than anticipated. The cost of automation plummets, making it economically viable to replace a wide swath of human labor, from truck drivers and call center operators to paralegals and junior coders, in a compressed time frame of just a few years. The hollowing out of the middle-skilled job market accelerates into a full-scale collapse. Educational institutions and government retraining programs designed for a slower pace of change are overwhelmed and unable to adapt quickly enough. As a result, millions of workers find themselves with skills that are no longer economically valuable, stranded in a labor market that has no place for them. The social and political consequences of such a rapid displacement would be severe. We would likely see a dramatic increase in economic inequality, with the owners of the AI and robotic capital accumulating unprecedented wealth, while a large segment of the population experiences stagnant or falling incomes. This economic precariousness could fuel widespread social unrest and political polarization. Populist movements on both the left and the right could gain traction, promising simplistic solutions like aggressive protectionism, strict curbs on technological development, or the nationalization of AI companies. Social trust, both in institutions and in fellow citizens, would erode, leading to a more fragmented and contentious society. The psychological toll would be immense, with rising rates of depression and anxiety as people grapple with a loss of not just income, but also the sense of purpose and identity that work provides. This scenario brings to life the concern articulated by the historian Yuval Noah Harari, the potential creation of a useless class. It's a jarring and intentionally provocative term, but it points to a novel historical possibility. In past technological revolutions, while individuals were displaced, they were not rendered fundamentally useless to the economic system. A farmer who lost their job to a tractor could move to the city and become a factory worker. They still possessed physical capabilities that the system needed. Harari's concern is that for the first time, AI could create a class of people whose basic cognitive and physical abilities are simply no longer a necessary input for the economic machine. They would not be exploited as the proletariat was in the 19th century. They would simply be irrelevant from a purely economic standpoint. The policy failures that could lead to this outcome are numerous. A failure to invest in a radical rethinking of our education systems, moving them toward lifelong, adaptable learning models. A failure to build robust and modern social safety nets, whether through UBI, a negative income tax, or other means that can support people through prolonged periods of transition. A failure to use the tax system to ensure that the immense wealth generated by automation is circulated back into the society that created it, rather than being hoarded by a small elite. And a failure of political will to act proactively, with leaders choosing to ignore the warning signs until the crisis is already in full swing. In the Great Displacement scenario, we fail on all these fronts. We allow technology to develop in a laissez-faire vacuum, assuming that the market will magically sort everything out, just as it has in the past. But we fail to recognize that the speed and breadth of this technological shift may be fundamentally different, requiring a more deliberate and humane approach to governance. It is important to stress that this scenario is not an inevitability. It is a warning. It represents the consequence of inaction and a lack of foresight. The technologies of AI and robotics are not inherently destined to create this future. They are tools, and like any tool, their impact depends on how we choose to wield them. The Great Displacement is what happens when we prioritize short-term efficiency gains and corporate profits above all else, neglecting the social contract and the well-being of our fellow citizens. The danger of this scenario is that it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we become paralyzed by fear and fatalism, we may fail to take the very actions that are needed to avert it. Conversely, by taking this possibility seriously, by studying its potential dynamics and consequences, we can identify the key leverage points where intervention is most needed. It forces us to ask the hard questions now. What is the purpose of our economy if not to provide for the well-being of all people? How do we define a life of dignity and purpose in a world where traditional work may be less central? What investments must we make today in our educational and social systems to build a more resilient and adaptive society for tomorrow? The Great Displacement is a vision of a future we could stumble into through negligence. It serves as a powerful motivation to actively and intentionally build a different one. It reminds us that the most important task ahead is not technological, but social and political. It is the task of shaping a future where the incredible power of our new tools is used not to displace humanity, but to uplift it. By understanding the anatomy of this potential failure, we are better equipped to architect a success, which leads us to a more optimistic and perhaps more likely alternative scenario. In contrast to the cautionary tale of the Great Displacement, there lies a second, more optimistic and historically consistent scenario, the Great Adaptation. This future is not a frictionless utopia, but it is one in which humanity successfully navigates the technological transition, leading to a period of renewed productivity, creativity, and ultimately a higher standard of living. This scenario is grounded in the historical precedent that time and again, technological disruption has ultimately resulted in more and better forms of work. It is a future defined by the evolution of tasks, not the extinction of jobs. In the Great Adaptation, the deployment of AI and robotics unfolds more gradually, moderated by the economic, regulatory, and human-centric barriers we've explored. The transition is not a sudden shock, but a progressive wave. For the majority of professions, AI does not arrive as a replacement, but as a powerful new tool, a collaborator that augments human capabilities. The accountant is not fired. She is freed from the drudgery of data entry to become a strategic advisor. The software developer is not made obsolete. She uses an AI coding assistant to build more complex and innovative systems faster than ever before. The doctor is not replaced by a diagnostic algorithm. She uses the AI's analysis to diagnose disease earlier and more accurately, allowing her to spend more time on patient care and complex treatment planning. This is a world of task encroachment, not job elimination. As routine and predictable tasks are automated, the value and demand for uniquely human skills skyrocket. The ability to think critically, to solve unstructured problems, to communicate with empathy, to collaborate effectively, and to create novel ideas becomes the new gold standard of the labor market. The education system, having recognized this shift, undergoes a profound transformation. The focus moves from rote memorization to project-based learning, from disciplinary silos to interdisciplinary problem-solving. Lifelong learning becomes the norm, with accessible and affordable, just-in-time education modules, allowing people to seamlessly upskill and reskill throughout their careers. This path directly mirrors the great technological adaptations of the past. In the early 20th century, the mechanization of agriculture in the United States caused a massive displacement of labor. In 1900, roughly 40% of the U.S. workforce was employed in agriculture. By 2000, that number had fallen to less than 2%. If you had told someone in 1900 that these tens of millions of farm jobs would disappear, they might have predicted a future of permanent mass unemployment, much like the fears we hear today. But what they couldn't have predicted was the emergence of entirely new sectors of the economy: aerospace, information technology, healthcare, and a vast service and creative economy that would absorb that labor and create a standard of living unimaginable to that farmer. The Great Adaptation scenario posits that we are at a similar inflection point today. The productivity gains from AI will not only make existing goods and services cheaper and more abundant, but they will also create the economic surplus needed to fund entirely new industries. Just as the personal computer created the roles of web designer and IT consultant, AI will create a new suite of professions that are difficult for us to even conceive of from our current vantage point. We are already seeing the early shoots of this new growth. The demand for AI ethicists, prompt engineers, and data storytellers has appeared from almost nowhere in just the last few years. What might other future jobs look like? We might see AI-assisted elder care companions who manage a suite of technologies to help seniors live independently while they focus on providing the crucial human element of companionship. We could see virtual habitat designers who use generative AI to create immersive, educational, and entertainment experiences. There might be algorithmic auditors who specialize in ensuring corporate and government AI systems are fair and transparent, or personal data brokers who help individuals manage and monetize their own data in the new economy. The crucial insight from history is that technology is a relentless engine of job creation, just as it is one of job destruction. The human capacity for wanting new things, new experiences, and new solutions to our problems is seemingly infinite, and this desire is what fuels the creation of new markets and new work. In this scenario, society makes a series of wise, proactive choices. Recognizing the potential for disruption, governments, corporations, and civil society work together to build the necessary bridges for the workforce. Social safety nets are modernized to support people during career transitions, perhaps through portable benefits that are not tied to a single employer, or wage insurance programs that top up the incomes of workers who have to take a lower-paying job in a new field. Public investment pours into research and development, not just for AI itself, but for understanding its societal impacts. Antitrust enforcement is used to prevent the concentration of power in a few tech giants, ensuring a competitive and dynamic AI ecosystem. The narrative in this future is not one of humans versus machines, but of humans with machines. The focus shifts from fearing what we might lose to being excited about what we can gain. The automation of tedious cognitive labor frees up human talent to focus on the grand challenges of our time: curing diseases, addressing climate change, exploring the universe, and creating profound works of art and culture. The result is not a leisure society devoid of purpose, but a more purposeful society, where human energy is directed toward more meaningful and creative ends. The Great Adaptation is not a utopian fantasy. It will still involve disruption, and there will be individuals and communities who struggle with the transition. It requires hard work, significant investment, and a willingness to reform our oldest institutions. But it is a fundamentally optimistic and achievable vision. It is a future built on the enduring belief in human adaptability, creativity, and resilience. It rests on the conviction that technology is ultimately a tool, and that we have the collective wisdom to shape it into an instrument of progress, creating a future of work that is not only more productive, but also more deeply and satisfyingly human. This scenario reminds us that the future is not something that happens to us, but something we build together through a series of conscious, deliberate, and hopeful choices. We find ourselves at the end of our exploration, standing at a vantage point overlooking the landscape of tomorrow. We have seen that the future is not a single, monolithic headline, "Your job disappears in 2029, but rather a spectrum of possibilities, a vast delta of branching rivers flowing from the present moment. Along one channel lies the turbulent water of the Great Displacement, a future of social friction and inequality born from a failure to adapt. Along another flows the steadier current of the Great Adaptation, a future where human ingenuity and wise governance channel the power of technology toward shared prosperity. The final course of the river is not yet charted. It will be determined by the countless small and large choices we make as individuals and as a global community in the years to come. The journey has shown us that our relationship with technology is, and has always been, a story of co-evolution. We shape our tools, and then our tools shape us. The mechanical loom, the steam engine, the computer, each of these did more than just change our jobs. They changed our societies, our cities, our very sense of time and identity. Artificial intelligence is the next and perhaps most profound chapter in this long story. It is a tool that reflects and amplifies our own intelligence, forcing us to ask fundamental questions about what it means to be human in the first place. What are the essential qualities that we value, both in ourselves and in each other? When the routine functions of cognition can be outsourced to a machine. The answer that echoes through our entire analysis is that the enduring value of humanity lies not in our capacity for computation, but in our capacity for connection, creativity, and consciousness. The skills that are proving most resilient to automation are not the ones we learn from a textbook, but the ones we cultivate through lived experience. It is the empathy of the caregiver, the curiosity of the scientist, the courage of the entrepreneur, the wisdom of the leader, and the creative vision of the artist. These are not soft skills to be relegated to the footnotes of a resume. They are becoming the core drivers of economic and social value. In a world awash with artificial answers, the ability to ask a powerful question becomes a superpower. In a world of infinite AI-generated content, the spark of genuine original insight becomes priceless. In a world of optimized digital interactions, the warmth of an authentic human connection becomes the rarest and most sought-after commodity. The challenge, then, is not to outcompete the machines at their own game of logic and data processing. It is to cultivate the gardens of our own humanity, to become more curious, more compassionate, more creative, and more collaborative. It is to build an economy and a culture that rewards these qualities, and an education system that fosters them from the earliest age. The rise of AI is not an endgame for human intelligence. It is an invitation to elevate it, to move to a higher level of thinking and being, and to focus on the things that truly matter. We have been here before. This is not humanity's first encounter with transformative, world-altering change. We transitioned from nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled agricultural societies. We moved from the farm to the factory during the Industrial Revolution. We adapted to the information age of the personal computer and the internet. Each of these transitions was accompanied by periods of fear, uncertainty, and disruption. Each required a fundamental rewriting of our social and economic contracts, and in each case, we adapted. We learned. We built new institutions and new ways of life. Humanity's story is a story of continuous adaptation. We are a species defined not by our static perfection, but by our remarkable capacity for change. The challenge of our time is not to try and stop the technological tide, an effort as futile as King Canute commanding the waves. The challenge is to learn how to build better boats. It is to design more resilient social systems, to foster more adaptable skills in our children, and to cultivate a deeper sense of shared purpose and community. It is to approach the future not with fear, which paralyzes, nor with naive optimism, which breeds complacency, but with a clear-eyed and constructive curiosity. The central question is not if we will adapt, but how wisely, how equitably, and how humanely we will choose to do so. The future of work is not a spectator sport. It is a design challenge, and we are all, in our own way, on the design team.